Welcome back to our channel, Soap Fans. Today is an absolutely phenomenal day to dive deep into the most explosive drama television has to offer. We have breaking updates that will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the current fashion wars. Grab your coffee and brace yourselves, because the fallout we are about to unpack is legendary. The neon lights of the bikini bar flickered over a fallen king, casting long, jagged shadows that signaled the inevitable collision of fate and high-stakes consequences. Eric Forrester, the undisputed titan of Los Angeles fashion, hit the floor with a sickening thud, and in that exact fraction of a second, a petty corporate rivalry detonated into a merciless blood feud. The image of Eric Forrester lying unconscious on the floor of the bikini bar is a visual that will haunt the Forrester family for the rest of their lives. The patriarch, a man who built a global empire from the ground up, was reduced to a casualty in a barroom brawl. When Will Spencer's fist connected with Eric's jaw, the sickening crack echoed louder than any fashion show finale. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated chaos. The crowd gasped in collective horror. Elektra Forrester screamed, her voice piercing the heavy, music-filled air. R.J. Forrester stood paralyzed, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and surging rage. But the most dangerous reaction did not come from anyone inside that bar. The most dangerous reaction came from the woman who would soon turn this tragic accident into a weapon of mass destruction. Steffy Forrester does not forgive, and she certainly does not forget. When the news of her grandfather's brutal assault reached her ears, something fundamental snapped inside the Forrester co-CEO. She did not view this as a tragic misunderstanding. She did not view this as a young man losing control of his temper in a heated moment. Steffy viewed this as an act of war. Her grandfather, the heart and soul of their family, had been struck down by a Spencer. The sheer audacity of the act ignited a fire within Steffy that could not be extinguished by apologies or explanations. She immediately went into a state of hyper-focused, lethal calculation. Her first move was not to cry or panic. Her first move was to dig. Steffy had already been suspicious of the sudden, vicious media attacks on Eric. The livestream meltdown was bad, but the relentless, highly coordinated blog posts tearing Eric's legacy to shreds felt too organized. They felt funded. Sitting in her sprawling office at Forrester Creations, bathed in the cold light of her computer monitor, Steffy followed the digital footprints. She tracked the IP addresses, she traced the shell companies, and she followed the money. The financial trail led directly to the doorstep of Spencer Publications. The revelation hit Steffy like a bolt of lightning. The blog smearing Eric Forrester, the relentless digital assassination of his character, was being bankrolled by Bill Spencer's empire. In Steffy's mind, the puzzle pieces violently snapped together. Will Spencer's punch was no longer a drunken accident. It was the physical manifestation of a premeditated corporate attack. The Spencers were trying to destroy Eric mentally through the media, and when that was not enough, they sent Will to destroy him physically. It was a conspiracy of the highest order, and Steffy was holding the smoking gun. Armed with a dossier of financial records, IP traces, and witness statements from the bikini bar, Steffy did not hesitate. She bypassed the corporate lawyers and went straight to the authorities. Walking into the Los Angeles Police Department precinct, Steffy radiated an aura of absolute, uncompromising authority. She slammed the evidence onto the detective's desk, outlining a clear, undeniable narrative of premeditated assault and corporate espionage. She demanded immediate action. She demanded that the Spencer heir be ripped from his pedestal and thrown into a concrete cell. Across town, the atmosphere inside the Spencer mansion was a stark contrast to the brewing storm. Bill Spencer was pacing his luxurious living room, a smug, victorious grin plastered across his face. He was reveling in the media coverage, watching Eric Forrester's reputation crumble piece by piece. He felt untouchable. Katie Logan Spencer sat nearby, a heavy knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. She felt a flicker of genuine guilt over the ruthless tactics being employed against the man who had once been family, but she remained silent, hoping the storm would pass. They were completely oblivious to the catastrophic reality hurtling toward their front door. The heavy, suffocating silence of the Los Angeles night was suddenly shattered by the piercing wail of police sirens. Red and blue lights exploded across the manicured lawns of the Spencer estate, casting frantic, strobing shadows through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. The sheer volume of the approaching vehicles signaled that this was not a routine visit. This was a raid. Bill's smug grin vanished instantly, replaced by a deep, primal confusion. Katie stood up, her heart hammering against her ribs, her breath catching in her throat. Before Bill could even reach the grand entryway, the heavy oak doors were thrown open. A swarm of uniformed LAPD officers flooded the foyer, their expressions grim and their hands resting cautiously on their duty belts. The sheer force of the intrusion left the Spencer patriarch momentarily speechless. Then, the lead detective stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Will Spencer, who had just entered the room, looking pale and haunted by the events at the bikini bar. The words the detective spoke next effectively ended the world as the Spencers knew it. He announced that Will Spencer was being placed under arrest for the aggravated, premeditated assault of Eric Forrester. The chaos that erupted in that foyer was absolute and terrifying. Two officers moved swiftly, grabbing Will by the arms and spinning him around. The cold, unforgiving sound of metal ratcheting shut echoed through the grand hall as handcuffs were slapped onto Will's wrists. The physical reality of the metal biting into his skin sent a violent shockwave through the room. Will's eyes widened in sheer terror, his bravado entirely stripped away, leaving only a frightened young man staring at his mother. Katie Logan Spencer let out a visceral, agonizing scream. The sight of her son, her flesh and blood, being treated like a hardened criminal and manhandled by the police was a trauma that shattered her completely. She lunged forward, tears streaming down her face, begging the officers to stop, pleading that there had to be a mistake. But the officers formed a barricade, gently but firmly pushing the hysterical mother back. The image of Will in handcuffs, standing helplessly in his own home, was burned into Katie's retinas forever. Bill Spencer erupted like a dormant volcano. The veins in his neck bulged as he roared at the officers, his voice shaking the crystal chandeliers above. He threatened them with lawsuits, he threatened them with his immense wealth and political connections, he demanded the badge numbers of every single person in the room. He was a billionaire, a man who bought and sold companies for sport, and yet, in this exact second, he was entirely, devastatingly powerless. His money could not unclasp the steel around his son's wrists. His power could not stop the momentum of the law. And then, stepping out from the shadows of the open doorway, came the architect of this destruction. Steffi Forrester walked into the Spencer mansion with the cold, lethal grace of an executioner. She did not flinch at Bill's roaring. She did not soften at Katie's sobbing. She stood tall, her eyes burning with a righteous, unforgiving fury. The room fell into a stunned silence as Steffi looked directly into Bill Spencer's eyes. With a voice that was eerily calm and dripping with venom, Steffi delivered her chilling ultimatum. She declared that this was the exact price for touching a Forrester. She outlined the financial trail she had handed to the police, proving that Spencer Publications had orchestrated the smear campaign that led to the physical attack. She told Bill that his arrogance had finally cost him his son. Every word she spoke was a calculated strike, designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. Katie looked at Steffi, her sister's stepdaughter, a woman she had known for years, and saw a complete stranger. The fragile peace that the Logan and Forrester families had been desperately trying to maintain was instantly incinerated. The relationship between the two houses did not just fracture, it disintegrated into dust. There was no coming back from this. Steffi had crossed the ultimate line by bringing the police into their home, and Katie knew that the war had only just begun. Will was dragged out of the mansion, forced to do a humiliating perp walk down his own driveway, illuminated by the flashing lights of the police cruisers. He was shoved into the back of a squad car, the heavy door slamming shut with a finality that made his blood run cold. As the cruiser pulled away, carrying the Spencer heir into the dark labyrinth of the criminal justice system, the true gravity of the situation settled over the warring families. But Steffi was not the only Forrester mobilizing for war. Back at Forrester Creations, Ridge Forrester received the call confirming the arrest. The patriarch of the Forrester family stood in his office, looking out over the glittering Los Angeles skyline. The transformation in Ridge was terrifying. He was no longer a fashion designer worried about hemlines and fabric choices. He was a warlord defending his bloodline. The attack on his father had awakened a ruthless, calculating side of Ridge that had not been seen in years. Ridge immediately began working the phones. He did not call PR firms or fashion editors. He called judges. He called district attorneys. He called every political heavyweight and legal shark whose campaigns and careers had been quietly funded by Forrester money over the decades. Ridge was building a massive, impenetrable legal blockade. His objective was clear and merciless: he was going to ensure that Will Spencer did not see the light of day. The strategy was brutal in its simplicity. Ridge was using his immense influence to paint Will as a dangerous, volatile flight risk who had executed a premeditated attack on a beloved, elderly public figure. He was pulling every string available to ensure that when the bail hearing took place, the judge would deny it completely. Ridge wanted Will to sit in a concrete cell, terrified and isolated, while the legal machinery slowly ground his future into dust. This maneuver fundamentally changed the nature of the conflict. Will Spencer was no longer just a young man who had made a catastrophic mistake in a bar. He had been transformed into a helpless pawn in a brutal, billion-dollar legal war between two empires. He was the collateral damage in a feud that had escalated far beyond stolen designs and runway shows. Will was trapped in a holding cell, staring at the peeling paint on the walls, realizing that his freedom was entirely dependent on a war he could not fight. The psychological terror of Will's situation cannot be overstated. Stripped of his designer clothes, his phone, and his family's immediate protection, he was left alone with the crushing weight of his actions. He knew that Ridge Forrester was out there, moving pieces on a chessboard, actively working to keep him locked in a cage. The claustrophobia of the cell was nothing compared to the suffocating realization that he had handed the Forresters the ultimate weapon to destroy his family. Bill Spencer, meanwhile, was mobilizing an army of defense attorneys, but he was finding doors slammed in his face. The Forrester influence ran deep in the city's judicial system, and Ridge had moved faster than Bill could have ever anticipated. The frantic scramble to secure a sympathetic judge was proving to be a nightmare. Bill's furious energy was hitting a brick wall of legal red tape and political favors. The Spencer patriarch was bleeding power, and he knew it. The fashion industry watched in stunned silence as the two biggest houses in the world abandoned the runway for the courtroom. The headlines were no longer about couture collections or stolen diamonds. The headlines were about aggravated assault, denied bail, and the spectacular, tragic collapse of a dynasty. The blood feud had consumed everything in its path, leaving nothing but scorched earth and broken families. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, the lines were irrevocably drawn. Steffi had delivered the decisive strike, Katie was left mourning the loss of her son's freedom, Bill was fighting a desperate battle against an invisible legal wall, and Ridge was tightening the noose. The accidental swing in the bikini bar had unleashed a chain reaction of vengeance that could not be stopped. The Forresters demanded blood, and the Spencers were bleeding. Will Ridge's legal blockade destroy Will, or can Bill orchestrate a miracle? Next. The inevitable collision of fate and high-stakes consequences has finally arrived, striking the Forrester empire with the catastrophic force of a runaway freight train. A devastating betrayal is brewing in the shadows, orchestrated by a woman who has masterfully played the role of the innocent bystander for far too long. Melissa Dillon is no longer hiding behind her sweet, unassuming smile. The mask has officially slipped, revealing a calculating, cold-blooded predator ready to burn the Forrester legacy to the ground. The viewers have always been deeply suspicious of her carefully constructed good girl act, sensing the venom and ambition lurking just beneath the surface. Now, the absolute worst fears of the Forrester family are about to materialize in the most destructive way possible, proving that the most dangerous enemies are always the ones you invite directly into your own home. The primary catalyst for this impending corporate and romantic explosion is the tragic downfall of Will Spencer. Following the horrifying, violent brawl at the bikini bar where Will accidentally delivered a crushing punch to the jaw of the legendary Eric Forrester, the young Spencer heir finds himself completely isolated and emotionally bleeding. He is spiraling into a dark abyss of guilt, regret, and excommunication from the Forrester clan. His relationship with Electra Forrester has been violently severed, shattered by the sheer brutality of his actions against her grandfather. Will is desperate for a lifeline, entirely vulnerable to manipulation, and completely unaware that he is being hunted. This is the exact moment Melissa Dillon has been patiently waiting for, watching from the sidelines like a hawk circling wounded prey, ready to execute her master plan. The moment the ink dries on Will and Electra's tragic breakup, Dillon launches her strike with breathtaking speed and absolute ruthlessness. She does not wait for the dust to settle, nor does she offer a platonic shoulder to cry on. Instead, she marches directly to the Spencer Beach house, corners the emotionally devastated Dollar Bill Jr., and boldly professes her undying love for him. It is a stunning, aggressive maneuver that completely obliterates the concept of loyalty and friendship. The sheer audacity of her confession leaves Will reeling, catching him at his absolute weakest and most desperate moment. Dillon knows exactly what she is doing, capitalizing on his overwhelming need for validation and affection after being harshly banished by the woman he thought he loved. The sacred concept of the girl code has been violently assassinated without a second thought. Dillon is technically still Electra Forrester's trusted assistant at Forrester Creations, a position of immense privilege and access. She had previously looked Electra directly in the eyes and solemnly promised her fake best friend that she would never, under any circumstances, attempt to hook up with Will Spencer ever again. That promise was nothing but a calculated, manipulative lie, a brilliant smokescreen designed to keep Electra completely blind to the threat lurking right beside her desk. Dillon has absolutely zero remorse about crossing this unforgivable line. She views Electra not as a grieving friend, but as an obstacle that has finally been removed from the chessboard, clearing the path for her ultimate ascension into the Spencer dynasty. The tantalizing whispers and explosive rumors circulating through the Los Angeles rumor mill have been confirmed. It is only a matter of time before Melissa Dillon and Will Spencer begin secretly hitting the sheets, engaging in a scorching, forbidden romance hidden away from the prying eyes of the world. The adrenaline of their clandestine hookups fuels the fire of their dangerous, toxic connection. Every stolen touch, every whispered promise behind closed doors is laced with the intoxicating thrill of deception and the rush of getting away with the ultimate betrayal. They are playing a high-stakes game of emotional roulette, knowing full well that if the Forresters discover their secret affair, the fallout will be of apocalyptic proportions. The beach house becomes their private sanctuary of sin, a fortress where they can indulge in their darkest desires while the world outside burns to the ground. But the danger does not stop at the bedroom door, and the romantic betrayal is merely the tip of the iceberg. The true horror of this situation lies within the glittering, high-security walls of Forrester Creations. Dillon maintains her critical position as Electra's assistant, walking the executive hallways with total impunity. She is the ultimate Trojan horse, deeply embedded within the enemy camp, absorbing every detail of their operations. Because Electra, Steffi Forrester, Ridge Forrester, and Eric Forrester have absolutely no idea that Dillon is secretly sharing Will Spencer's bed, they view her as a loyal, harmless, and dedicated employee. They speak freely in her presence, completely unaware that they are handing a loaded weapon directly to their greatest adversaries. They leave highly confidential design portfolios open on their desks while she is in the room. They discuss critical launch dates, emergency marketing strategies, and highly sensitive supply chain issues while she quietly pours their coffee and takes meticulous notes. Dillon is absorbing every single piece of classified corporate intelligence like a sponge, memorizing the blueprints of the Forrester empire. She is privy to the most sensitive, highly guarded secrets of the fashion house. She knows exactly when Eric's delayed couture line is scheduled to hit the runway. She knows the exact vulnerabilities in Steffi's international distribution network, and she hears the desperate, frantic conversations between Ridge and his design team as they scramble to counter the massive success of the rival Logan fashion house. Across town, the Spencer War Room is buzzing with ruthless anticipation and predatory excitement. Bill Spencer and Katie Logan Spencer are riding the massive high of their recent corporate victories, actively bankrolling vicious media attacks against Eric Forrester and gloating over the chaos they have inflicted upon their rivals. The fashion war has transformed into a bitter, devastating blood feud, and the Spencers are constantly looking for the ultimate kill shot to win Forrester Creations once and for all. When they discover that Will's new secret lover is none other than a trusted, highly placed insider at Forrester Creations, the dynamic shifts immediately. The Spencers do not just accept Melissa Dillon, they welcome her with wide, enthusiastic, and highly calculating open arms. Bill Spencer, a man who built his entire multi-billion-dollar empire on ruthless exploitation and cutthroat corporate espionage, instantly recognizes a kindred spirit in Dillon. He sees past her sweet, innocent facade and identifies the cold, calculating ambition burning fiercely in her eyes. Bill and Katie are absolutely thrilled that the complicated, messy, and emotionally draining saga of Will and Elektra is finally over. They despise the Forrester connection, viewing it as a massive vulnerability in their son. In Melissa Dillon, they see a woman who is not only devoted to Will, but who possesses the exact leverage they desperately need to crush Ridge and Eric into the dirt. She is no longer just a girlfriend, she is a highly valued, indispensable strategic asset in their war against Forrester. The corporate interrogations begin under the clever guise of warm, welcoming family dinners. Bill and Katie casually quiz Dillon about the atmosphere at Forrester Creations, probing for any sign of weakness, panic, or instability in the enemy camp. And Dillon, desperate to prove her worth and solidify her permanent place within the billionaire Spencer family, sings like a canary. She does not hesitate for a single second to betray the people who gave her a chance. She eagerly hands over the classified launch dates, the fabric supplier issues, the internal panic gripping the Forrester executives, and the exact details of their upcoming collections. She betrays Elektra, Steffi, and Ridge with a chilling ease, trading their livelihoods and their legacy for a coveted seat at the Spencer dining table. Dillon's treachery is breathtaking in its massive scope and devastating efficiency. She is actively, systematically sinking the Forresters to impress Will Spencer's family, proving her loyalty to the Spencers by destroying the competition from the inside out. Every piece of stolen information she delivers to Bill and Katie is a poisoned dagger plunged directly into the back of the Forrester legacy. She watches with a satisfied, villainous smirk as the Logan fashion house mysteriously preempts every single move Forrester Creations attempts to make. When Steffi plans a surprise press release to manage the Eric fallout, Katie magically announces a massive counter-campaign hours earlier, stealing all the media thunder. When Ridge tries to secure an exclusive venue for their next showcase, Bill Spencer's checkbook suddenly buys it out from under him, leaving the Forresters scrambling in the dark. The Forresters are bleeding out, hemorrhaging capital and public goodwill, completely unaware that the woman holding the knife is standing right in their own design office, smiling at them every single morning. The psychological motivation driving Melissa Dillon is a toxic, volatile cocktail of jealousy, raw ambition, and a desperate, insatiable craving for power and recognition. She spent months standing quietly in Elektra Forrester's shadow, forced to play the supportive, invisible sidekick while Elektra enjoyed the immense wealth, the industry prestige, and the unwavering love of Will Spencer. Dillon wants everything Elektra took for granted, and she is willing to destroy anyone who stands in her way to get it. By dismantling Forrester Creations from the inside out and delivering the ultimate, crushing victory to the Spencers, Dillon believes she will become completely untouchable. She is convinced that Bill Spencer will reward her immense loyalty by ensuring she never has to struggle, wash dishes, or play the background ever again. She is selling her soul for a permanent VIP pass to the Los Angeles elite, trading her basic human decency for a life of luxury and corporate dominance. The tragic irony of Elektra Forrester's situation is almost too painful and heartbreaking to watch unfold. Elektra is currently drowning in the severe trauma of witnessing her beloved grandfather being punched to the floor by the man she loved with all her heart. She is leaning heavily on her work, throwing herself into her jewelry designs to escape the emotional agony of the Spencer feud and the heartbreak of losing Will. She trusts Dillon implicitly, viewing her assistant as one of the few stable, loyal, and trustworthy constants in her rapidly disintegrating world. Elektra has absolutely no idea that the woman fetching her fabric swatches, managing her daily calendar, and offering her a sympathetic ear is the exact same woman who was sleeping with her ex-boyfriend and systematically dismantling her family's historic empire piece by piece. The ticking time bomb of this unprecedented corporate espionage plot is wired to explode at any given moment, and the blast radius will be catastrophic. The Forresters are not fools, and they will not remain blind forever. Steffi and Ridge are highly intelligent, ruthless business leaders who will eventually realize that their impenetrable walls have been breached by a spy. When the corporate leaks become too specific, too perfectly timed, and too devastating to ignore, the aggressive hunt for the mole will begin in earnest. The tension will reach a boiling point as intense paranoia sweeps through the Forrester building, turning family members and colleagues against one another in a desperate search for the traitor. Everyone will be a suspect, but the undeniable trail of digital footprints, whispered phone calls in the corridors, and sudden, inexplicable favoritism from the Spencers will inevitably lead directly back to Melissa Dillon's desk. When the truth finally detonates, the destruction will be biblical. Elektra will face a personal and professional betrayal so profound it will permanently shatter her ability to trust anyone ever again. Will Spencer will be forced to confront the horrifying reality that the woman in his bed used his vulnerability to destroy the family of the woman he once loved. And Melissa Dillon will find herself trapped in the crosshairs of Steffy Forrester's legendary, merciless wrath, facing the absolute destruction of the life she tried to steal. Will Dillon's corporate espionage destroy Forrester Creations, or will her treacherous secrets blow up in her face? Drop your hottest theories in the comments and subscribe for more.